A nation divided against itself cannot stand. Whether we have a national divorce or not, we're divided and our nation cannot stand. We cannot continue with status quo as it is. It will not work. It is not working. It's going to get even worse. Welcome back to the channel, folks. I'm John Lovell, Warrior Poet Society. Earlier this week, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from the great state of Georgia, mind you, that's my state. Fist bump, fist pump. She said this: we need a national divorce. We need to separate red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this, from the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous America Last policies. We are, and it goes on. And then from October of 2021, there was a poll she ran that said, should America have a national divorce? And it's telling that 43% of folks said yes, 47.7 said no, stay together, and 9 were in the gap and didn't know what to say. And all of it just goes to show that I believe Marjorie Taylor Greene when she says everyone I talk to says we need to break up and split up. And I think the hostility is real, that there is this massive divide that keeps growing more and more. We are a divided nation. But let's have the conversation on a national divorce, because I think this is a conversation that folks are having. People are worried about civil war, and that looks really awful. Of like, don't like the civil war option. We've done that where over 500,000 Americans are battling out and dying. And why would we think that that's going to go over better now? There's no peaceful secessions that have been happening throughout history. It's always bloodshed. But I notice as we're trying to stay unified, like two unequally yoked partners in a marriage that just despise each other, staying together is toxic. And hey, guess what? Separation is going to be pretty ugly as well. So I have my own solutions on, hey, how in the world do we get out of this mess? I want to talk about secession and a national divorce, and how in the world something like that is that even tenable? Is that even possible? And by the way, all of the ideas seem terrible to me. So just with that in mind, we'll plunge in. But I wanted to take a moment first and say, hey, how in the world did we get here? And that can be telling as well, to pop any idyllic notions of how we could get out of it. We're in this because we no longer as a country have anything we really agree on. Our value center has been utterly crushed and annihilated into oblivion. So Americans, there's two completely different ethics, and the common ground between us has been eroding for a long time. And now the chasm is so great between us, we have zero common ground that we can even have a conversation on it. Here's two different ethics that are emerging. So it's not red party versus blue party. It's two separate versions of morality. So it's deeper than just politics. This is philosophy, this is theology, and always the repercussions of these can get really bad when a nation is divided against itself. Jesus says, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Abraham Lincoln, quoting Jesus, would have the exact same sentiment. Guess what? A nation divided against itself cannot stand. So that means whether we have a national divorce or not, we're divided and our nation cannot stand. We cannot continue with status quo as it is. It will not work. It is not working. It's going to get even worse. I posted on my Twitter account recently because I'm extremely active on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Here's my handle. And I said, for all of you guys who are scrolling around looking for news, it's all bad. I already checked the news. It's all bad. Guess what? It's getting worse all the time. All the news is terrible. And so post in the comments right now, give me one good piece of news. You can comment later on some other stuff in this video, but give me some good news. I'm just hungry for it because everything just seems really bleak. Now, I mentioned we have a completely separate ethic. One side would say one nation under God, God-fearing. The other side would say one nation under government. One morality say there is freedom of speech. It's a God-given right. You have the right to free speech. And the other side says, no, some types of speech is not free. And if you say the wrong thing, express even the wrong ideas, you can be censored and canceled. How dare you? One ethic says abortion is murder, and the other one says, no, it's a good thing. You can be able to abort. It's women's rights. One system of morality says, hey, Second Amendment is good. You have the right to defend yourself, whether that's from bad guys kicking in your door or whether it's tyrannical governments wanting to enslave you. And the other side says, nope, guns are bad. get rid of guns. As Gavin Newsom would recently say, that it looks like Second Amendment is a suicide pact. Even greater than that, and it looks like we have two different notions of what truth is. Hey, a man is a man and cannot become a woman any more than you can become a dinosaur. And if you think I'm stupid, that's how your trans woman and trans man sounds to me. You cannot become another gender. It's not a thing. Therefore, I cannot be transphobic because I don't actually recognize you can even do that. It's not a possibility. And so I'm like, what do you do with that? We can't even have a conversation anymore. And that's how we got to this great rift that is growing more, and we don't have a mechanism that can even bring us back together. The divide is bad, and it is getting worse. And I think many of you out there, though you wouldn't articulate it the way I necessarily have, you're probably nodding it in your computer screen or your phone, however you're watching, and you're being like, yes, yes, yes. But what in the world do we do about it? Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene said, hey, let's have a divide. And in some ways, I'm kind of like, hey, you know what? California, you do you. And Texas, you do you. And the big monkey in the room is kind of like, well, all right, you got millions of soldiers and incredible advanced weaponry. Who controls that? And what, do they just live and let live all of a sudden? And everybody just sort of like, hey, we're seceding. I'm like, all right, that's cool, man. Have fun doing your own country thing. Remember, we already did the Civil War thing. The idea was the North saw the South engaging in crimes against humanity and a bunch of other ills that they had as well, but they saw a great social evil. And guess what? I see social evils of crimes against humanity happening on the other side of the aisle. Transing kids and doing awful stuff to human babies. I think that's greater crimes against humanity than even the horrid act of slavery, which thank God we are over now. But now you're murdering babies. That's even worse to me. What is the answer to this? You just split up and the federal government and the military just lets you go? In the case of a secession, a national breakup, the federal government would have to shrink in power. And you think it's just going to do that? We've wanted to do that for decades and decades, and we haven't been able to do it. But if we were able to shrink the size of the federal government, I don't think we'd be in a bunch of this problem anyway. And this is where I arrive at a solution. The solution is not a new idea, it's an old idea that's been cast aside, and it's called federalism. The 10th Amendment reads like this: the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the United States respectively or to the people. In other words, we have our Bill of Rights, those first 10 amendments, that's basically saying, hey, federal government, you're not allowed to do this or this or this or this. The 10th Amendment as a catch-all says, hey, by the way, whatever is not enumerated here, the power lies with the states or the people. And that means the power with the states. Georgia should be able to do what Georgia wants in keeping with the Constitution. But instead, we have the opposite. State power has been shrinking over and over for generations. And the federal government, which now has millions of employees, has been growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that's the trade-off. States have more power and the federal government has less, or the federal government has more and the states have less. It is a mutually exclusive option. So for states to secede, the federal government has to shrink. But we're not capable of shrinking it. If it was keeping with the 10th Amendment, we wouldn't be doing all this, hey, tyrannical, crazy stuff, and we could just, hey, my home state could just decide its own stuff and we'll keep with the Constitution. And if somebody tries to attack us, we will hit them with the hammer of the American military. And that'd be fantastic and that'd be great. There's a lot of problems that would immediately be solved in a great national divorce. You know, like already we're moving toward a parallel society. I'm like, well, I'm not sending my kids to the public school. What, so the state can train them to be compliant little drones? Already parallel society in terms of self-sufficiency, alternate news, entertainment. In many ways, a national divorce would solve some of those problems. And I'm kind of like, yeah. But I think it would end up creating far more problems as well. And I think it would be absolute bloody disaster that would in the end fail. So I think the real feasible option here is this. We have to shrink the size of the federal government. We have to drain the swamp. We need a new wave of politician that doesn't really like politics, but has a moral fiber, that has courage, and that will actually vote conscience and the will of the people, and they refuse to take the big suitcase of money. And so I wanted to take this moment to announce that I, will support those folks. There's no way in the world I'll get into politics. I hate that stuff. But I've got a platform. I'm doing a thing. I'm called to steward this platform, and I get to say whatever I want, and I'm not beholden to anybody. I get to say what I want, and I get to say what I think and what I really feel. And God, I pray, will give me the courage to keep speaking until finally they shut us down. So get involved in who is actually running your state, who's running your local city and county governments. Understand who is your sheriff and get very, very involved. Gone are the days where any of us can afford political apathy. You got to know their names. You got to know what they're voting. You got to know what they really believe. You got to hold them accountable. And if they suck, you got to get them out and put somebody else in there. Guys, I have a call to action. Aside from all of those good things, if you would please support our channel, we would appreciate it. Best thing you could do is go visit warriorpoetsociety.com. Our website's filled with all kinds of curated items that help fund our movement. And also, I would ask you consider supporting us on watchwpsn.com. That's our streaming service. We have all kinds of shows that are going to be more and more thought leadership shows. And we've got all my classes, my gunfighting classes, and that of some of my peers. Top of the industry, guys. You will not regret it. We also just came out with a new home education class that's out. Matt Beaudreau absolutely crushed it. It will utterly shock you at dispelling a lot of myths and arming you with a great amount of good data and good ideas so that you can take charge of the education of your kids. Please check it out. URL is down below, watchwpsn.com. Guys, that's it from me. Train hard, train smart, and stay free. 2023 is going to be the best year for the WPSN streaming service, and this is why.
This day is gonna be the greatest memory.
If you're letting failure hold you back, you will become paralyzed by that and the world will pass you by.
That golden touch, time to light it up. Let's go. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Yeah, this is it. Go!
Gosh, this is going to be awesome. Special edition.
We're going to be intentional about how we raise our young heroes.
All this and so much more coming soon, only to WPSN.